Right, Thomas Farrugia, CEO at BetaBugs, along with Larry, who will introduce himself as well. BetaBugs is an insect genetics company. We develop and distribute breeds of black soldier fly to insect farmers. So we'll supply you with the livestock to go into insect farming units. And Larry, you want to introduce Flybox?
Hey guys, I'm Larry. Yeah, I think if you click to the next slide, I think there's a little intro of you
Yeah, great.
and
Okay, I've done that
yeah,
one. We're up in Edinburgh.
yeah,
I will supply a
and
fly
yeah,
box.
so I'm with Flybox. We're an insect farming technology company, so we focus on building insect waste management solutions or insect bioconversion solutions for existing waste management companies and food processing companies. So basically, people who either generate or handle a lot of organic waste. We give them an alternative to other organic waste treatment solutions. And we build the technology and then provide a plug and play support business model so that you can outsource the hard parts of insect farming, which there are a few, which is why me and Thomas kind of got together, was to kind of separate out some of the difficult parts and offer a joined up solution to people wanting to get into the space. And so, yeah.
Okay, so yeah, we'll be running through effectively how black soldier fly works, farming works, especially when you go for a joined up solution. And this kind of starts setting the scene a bit. Larry, do you want to walk through this?
Yeah, so this is kind of the overview. So we're going to unpack each of these elements. So forgive us if it seems a bit, you know, like an abstract painting or something right now. But essentially, we're going to be walking through how you can take disused space. So if you're in the kind of farming world, this is kind of marginal warehouse land, old warehouses, and you can then put in a turnkey insect farm or insect bioconversion unit. You can then work with a breeding outsourcing company. You can work with BetaBugs to provide you the baby larvae, the grubs, which arrive, and so that you're able to then outsource all of the entomology. You then put your organic feedstock, whether it's generated yourself, if you have organic feedstock that works, or from a partner that we can also supply you organic feedstock from as a pre-mix or as something you mix on site. Then you operate it. So there's a kind of SOPs in terms of how you
And
prepare
also,
the crates full of insects. Yeah. Sorry?
sorry, Larry, I think I've had a bit of a signal break. You go first.
Okay, no worries. And then there's at the end of the process, there's a buyback. So where the adult larvae, so the grubs that have grown into adult larvae, that's the product we want to kind of sell to the market. We then have various kind of offtake options for you, which are ready-made that you can either choose to plug into or not. And so the point of this kind of model is to decomplicate and also make more affordable the insect farming journey and make it much easier and lower the barrier to entry for the existing food industry to jump in. So our philosophy is not to set up an insect farming industry that's kind of separate. Our model is very much to provide insect solutions to the food industry. Then it's not the insect industry advocating for change; it's the food industry trying to industrialize the use of decomposers for a natural waste management solution. And so that's very much our philosophy going in, and that's why what we'll show you is kind of in that spirit.
Right. So I'll just walk through a bit about the black soldier fly, and then we'll go a bit more into the kit. But what you've got with black soldier fly is effectively two very distinct animals in one. You've got a fly which exists to lay eggs, and then those eggs hatch out into neonates, which you can kind of see crawling around actually across their bigger siblings. We supply either eggs or juvenile larvae, and then the idea is that your juvenile larvae, either the eggs or juvenile larvae, you'll grow out into mature larvae, which are what you turn into the protein source. And pre-pupae and pupae are effectively just going to turn back into flies and lay eggs. So that's the bit we worry about. And we focus on making the eggs and the juvenile larvae. Juvenile larvae into larvae is 7 days, so it works really effectively to be using juvenile larvae in a, say, modular farming system because you don't need to worry about hatching eggs. You don't need to worry about producing eggs yourself as well. But you just take these grubs, whack them in, and then off you go. I'll touch on that in a bit. But yeah, the black soldier fly is very hungry, fast growing, as you've seen from that picture. It's a bit like a rabbit turning into an elephant. It's a big increase in biomass. They eat a wide range of things. High protein source, so 40 to 50% once you dry them down. And it's a low carbon alternative because of what you're growing them on, because you can produce locally. And they're a low risk animal to farm in terms of it's legalized in the UK and there's no association with any disease. Uh, then the other drivers are you can turn waste into value. Arguably, if you feed stuff to black soldier fly, especially if it's not actually considered waste. So there's a winning there if you're in the food waste processing sector, or if you're just looking to provide a sustainability story, because it's now if you're putting it to the animals, it's not waste from the food waste hierarchy. It allows you to produce protein with a low carbon footprint. If you're using it on farm, it allows you a method to diversify, uh, or you can use it for on-farm feeding. And that's where effectively there's cases for improving well-being and animal welfare through those approaches. And lastly, you've got the frass, which is great for improving plant health if you apply it to field or sell it into horticulture. So I'll just touch in on grubs or juvenile larvae supply from ourselves. So this is the key bit you need for livestock farming. This is what will go into the farm, and effectively it simplifies your rearing process. It allows you to dedicate all your production footprint and labor to producing rather than worrying about hatching eggs and producing eggs. Your cycle time is pretty much halved, which allows you to double turnaround, and that increases the amount of revenue you can be generating from say a Flybox grow. And because you're getting live grubs, you don't need to worry about hatchability and hatch rates as well, which can fluctuate your production. So the way it works really is pretty straightforward. We will hatch eggs out at our egg production facility. We'll feed the larvae to give them a great start as babies, and then we'll clean, package, and ship them over to the customer, to yourselves, or to others. And then it's all about receiving these and then putting them into the feed stock you have. When it comes to feed, black soldier fly can eat a wide range of things. So you can grow them on anything from fruit and veg to pre-consumer vegetables to brewers grains to other feedstocks, as long as it's pre-consumer vegetable in nature in the UK. And then you grow these guys out for a week on those feedstocks. The yield of larvae you get will be dependent on the feedstock. And then you harvest those larvae out, and then you receive another batch of grubs or juveniles, and you put them back in and you do it again. So the idea is if you've got a number of modular units, so grows, you can actually have one on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, which you just run independently, and you're producing 3 times a week. So this is just what I've run through, so we'll pretty much skip that. And then, Larry, are you covering feedstock?
Yeah, unless you want to.
Yeah.
I'm happy if you
No,
want
go
to
ahead.
jump in. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So on the organic feedstock side, this is what you're feeding your insects. And now Nick went through some of the permissible feedstocks. We will kind of cover those a bit in the next slide in a second, but there are obviously restrictions, first of all, on what you can do depending on where you are in the world. So if everyone's planning on the UK here, we are restricted to the kind of pre-consumer feedstock like dairy grains, bakery waste, vegetable waste, food factory waste that doesn't contain animal byproducts. Can even include retail depackaged food that doesn't have any ABP animal byproducts in it. And so what you want with feedstock is to get it down to a porridge consistency. So the insects will eat any waste. So one of the kind of cool parts of insect farming is you think, okay, you could have a bin and you could have insects eat everything in the bin. And yes, that's technically true, but it will take them a long time to do it because they have very small mouth sizes. So really the particle size, if you put some black soldier fly in a dustbin, they will eventually, if you have enough of them in there, get through everything, but it will just take them an awfully long time. And so from an economics point of view, the energy you take to process it down into a porridge just speeds up that cycle time really quickly. So when Thomas was talking about a 7-day cycle time, that's contingent upon having waste within 1 to 3 millimeter particle size, more or less. And that's when they can eat really, really efficiently. You also have to take into account the feedstock itself needs to have as high protein as possible, ideally. It's not the end of the world. They don't need huge amounts of protein, but in general, the higher the better. They have nutritional requirements like any animal. So in the same way that if anyone is here in the poultry side, in the same way that you would have animal nutritionists figure out the diet for the least cost analysis for a poultry diet, the same thing happens in insects. There's protein, carbs, and fats and fiber, and that you want to hit. The only difference with insects is that rather than just eating that feed, therefore just focusing on the nutrition, insects live inside their feed as well. So the environment of the feed is also important. So its viscosity, its density, how easy it is to move back and forth. So, you can actually nerd out quite a lot when it comes to feedstock. So depending on what you have access to, you're going to want it to be able to be processed as cheaply as possible. So acquire the waste for as cheaply as possible, get it processed as cheaply as possible, and meet the nutritional and environmental requirements of the insects. And then all this kind of economic stuff and logistical stuff. So is it from a consistent source? You certainly don't want to have waste that is going to fluctuate. So one day the factory you're working with has 20% more water than the other day because they decided to flush the machines out a different way or whatever. So you can get very, very particular, and even waste sources that are the same on paper can be extremely different from two different suppliers. And so they're not always hot swappable. And so that consistency and that reliability is going to impact what your insect product looks like at the end. And so if you're trying to sell to a customer that has exact requirements, then of course it's not going to work if your feedstock suppliers are all over the place. So there's many things to consider, but that's the broad stripes on feedstock, and you can work with people that help you with that. You can work with nutritionists. You can do a waste map, formulate diets from that waste map. There's a process you go through, like with feeding any animal, and combining ingredients. But yeah, I think I can said enough about that. Yeah, so here's the list. I think we'll be forwarding these slides on to those that want it. But so I think we've already covered that. So we can go to the next one. So yeah, and in terms of the farming system, so we've covered the grubs now and the feedstock. So both of those now need to eat in a nice environment. And this is a tropical animal to BSF, so they require, broadly speaking, 27 to 30 degrees temperature, and they need 70%, 60 to 80% humidity, depending on what part of the life cycle. So you're talking about fairly high humidity and fairly high temperature. The good news is that when you're vertically farming them inside growing tunnels, they give off a lot of heat. So if you've got your airflow system designed properly, you're actually very low energy expenditure. So one of those units that you see in the picture, the yellow ones, are the growing tunnels. You don't have to do it inside containers. The reason why we show some of our images in containers is because most people do not want to deal with planning permission for their first sites. They might have marginal land. They might not have space in their containers. Sorry, in buildings, their buildings may not be insulated. And so, but you can build in insulated rooms. So as long as you've got a roof over it, you can save on the container part, even though that's a small part of the price, you can save it. What you do get with containers is a certain fungibility and tradability. So if you have designs to move to a larger site later, you can stack more containers, you can change them, you can trade them, you can resell them. It becomes a kind of a sort of actual tradable asset rather than something that you're bespoke building, and then the future will require you to change things. In terms of the feedstock kit, so that's the growing tunnel. So we have software that will manage whatever rain or shine or conditions there are outside. Everything will be controlled inside, and it's not just about the temperature and then in humidity. This is not like poultry or pig. Sorry, if you could go back one. It's not like poultry or pigs because this is controlled environment agriculture. It's vertical farming. There's a lot of obstructions that the trays cause that impede the proper distribution of air throughout the top and the bottom. So many farming companies will have problems with what we call hotspots. So different parts of the container or room they're working with will have different conditions. This can lead to escapees. It can lead to inefficiencies of all sorts. And so we've gone quite far, and our kind of IP relates to how we get the air to flow and distribute that nice environment as power efficiently as possible, but kind of thoroughly. So that's kind of the growing side. The feedstock kitchen side, the red containers, the bit on the left, that's where you're preparing the feedstock. So let's say you have fruit and veg coming in, brewers grains, they might need to be mixed up. So the fruits may need to be shredded and ground. you might have dry waste that needs to have water addition. They need to be mixed, and then they need to be pumped into trays. And so there are various devices to do that, and you can tailor that feedstock kitchen depending on the feedstock you have. You can have a very versatile setup that allows you to deal with a lot of things, or you can have a lower cost, very fixed thing that's working on a feedstock that you know you have control over, and you just want to deal with that feedstock. So there's definitely more customization at this end of the spectrum, along with waste storage and all the rest of it. And then at the end of the process, you're typically at a very minimum sieving the larvae from the frass once they finish consuming the feedstock. So you've got to sieve them, you've got to blanch or clean, or kind of make hygienic the larvae. And then you can either go to a freezing or a drying. And then our off-takers, which we'll get to in a second, we'll get to off-takers in a second, but there's a kind of post-processing that you can choose to do on site, or just kind of let the batches build up and sell it to somebody else who can do the post-processing on their site. So yeah, that's probably everything I've got to say there. Yeah, and that's basically I'll just say a quick piece here on automation. You can go various levels of automation. The thing you see in front of you right now is like a 5 ton a day system. That's 5 tons a day of feedstock, which is going to produce about 1 ton a day of live larvae. And so that, that sort of thing, might run £500,000 if you wanted to do that, or, just shy of that, like 400K sort of thing. And that's a kind of viable pilot where if you want to start getting into some sort of semi or pretty decent automation to pay back the kind of automation capex, you're going to need to be growing at least at this rate. Sub this, the kind of more pilot scale, you can get away, especially if you're just learning the ropes, get away with less automation, much more manual ways of preparing the feedstock, just bearing in mind that the economics are not going to be there. It's going to be a break-even scenario to kind of cut one's teeth into it. As you scale up, though, you're going to want to have picked the equipment in the beginning that is possible to be automated later. So you do want to think about your whole journey before and plan that all, because you will embrace automation at some point if you're going to go down this route. Yeah.
Yeah, so we've touched on this as well. So scaling
Yeah,
the
I
raw
think we've touched on
expansion.
this. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
And then kind of just mindful of time, so just looking at what the operations look like.
Yeah, it's on average one person per 2.5 tons per day of feedstock. So that one at the bottom there that I was showing you earlier, that's about two people to manage that. It's mainly looking after machines and supervising. It's not quite a perfect thing in that the bigger you go, there's more economies of scale. So actually the FTE per ton of feedstock goes down over time. And obviously at the smaller end, you might have it might take 2 people just to run 2 boxes, which would be the same as 5. So it's just bearing all that in mind. But it basically, the day-to-day is you basically have the feed mixer, which is pulling all of the ingredients in and mixing them up. It's then dosing them into 10 or 20 kilo trays. Then obviously in comes the grubs, which are also dosed in you kind of tip in the amount of grubs per tray, which is kind of already defined, and the dosing that you're doing is already defined. Then you basically stacking those on a pallet, shoving those into the growing room. And then at the end of the process, you've got to take them out, separate the frass from the larvae, and then decide on how you're going to process both of those. And then there's basically a washing station, and then it comes back to repeat. So that's the kind of the process. That happens once a week, that whole thing. It can happen over a 1 or a 2 day period every week.
And on the product side, there we go. Yeah.
Yeah. So look, this is kind of an area of continuing movement. So you have to, it depends on where you are, depends on your quality of product, which depends on your feedstock, which there's many ifs in all of this stuff. I'm trying to just give you a kind of pointers. But in terms of the main markets, dog and pet food is soaking up the majority of black soldier fly. Like, most insects produced on the market are black soldier fly, and they're going to kind of pet food. And for dogs mainly. There's kind of specialty fishing baits that are also good: reptiles, exotic pets, wild bird food, backyard chickens. So the kind of whole dried larvae, defatted meal, oils, purees are very popular with pet food. So the live purees. So there's different things, and roughly speaking, that price over there, 700 to 1200, is what you would get for kind of live. So if you're drying it down to 30% of the live weight, then you times everything by 3. And so that's kind of the range of prices you would expect to get per ton of live larvae coming out. So if you're making a ton a day, that's the kind of revenue you can expect per one. You know, TBD many things, but that's the kind of range. And then on the frass side of things, it can go as low as like 50 pounds a ton as just agricultural spreading. But really, if you're going to PAS 100 dry it, so you're going to actually 70 degrees for an hour, then it can go into fertilizer products and be sold at garden centers and horticulture. And that's where all of the guys doing biochar and doing like peat free are very, very excited about it. Lots of trials going on in the UK, lots of companies selling frass already, lots of companies combining frass with things. And there you're able to get bigger numbers.
Are we nearly there? Just contribute.
Yeah, I think I'm just mindful of we've touched on sustainability, so I think we're good, Nick, in terms of this was previously what we were touching on, where the idea is if you're using the bugs, you're effectively putting them in a reuse recycle category or kind of animal consumption actually. So the idea is it gives you a stronger sustainability story. And then just putting it all together, the whole process really is if you're working with ourselves and Flybox and bringing online a modular farm, you effectively bring on a simpler, more efficient system. You have more stable production, and you can solely focus on production, which makes everything much easier. And the other benefits to working with ourselves is effectively you've got dedicated local suppliers in the UK. You can come visit, you can come understand how the kit works and how to farm the grubs. You're going to have a rapid turnaround in bringing the kit online and then get supply with you from the start, and we'll go with you all the way. And as you scale up, because we're invested in your success and simplifying that operation. And we are quite good at what we do, so we are experts, and we want to bring you online as quickly as possible. And that's pretty much a wrap from our end.